Beginner Laser Project 24. It's a craft paint rack. It can be wall hung like so, and you can get your nice little bottles of craft paints you found on sale at the hobby store, and you can hang them up on the wall like that, or you could have it setting somewhere flat and it'll keep them all from falling over. There are two versions of this. This is the rack for 24, and there's also a file in there for the face to hold 49. Aside from the quantity difference, the main difference is going to be how much room you have between them, how fat your fingers are, and of course how many paints you have, and how many you need to store or hang up. So what's this made out of? This is made out of 1/8" plywood. You get at your hobby store. I don't have this one glued together all the way yet. I can take the face off. Maybe. There we go. So 1/8" plywood. I buy mine in 4x8 sheets from Home Depot and cut them down into 16-inch squares. That's what we work with most of the time. If you're using a different thickness of plywood from 1/8", these files are not going to work because they are set up and designed for 1/8" plywood. So you're pretty much stuck. You're going to have 1/8" plywood for this. So we'll get this set up. I'll take you onto the computer in Lightburn. I'll show you how all these files are. Okay, so here we are in Lightburn. I have the face file opened up for the 49 hole rack. Again, you can either use the 24 or the 49. It depends on how many paints you have or how fat your fingers are, because it gets a little tricky to grab them when they're this close together, but if you have slender fingers it won't be a problem. So my settings here, and this is set up for a 20-watt laser. We are doing 600 millimeters per minute, 90% power, and on this particular batch of plywood I have, it takes 2 passes to get good clean cuts. You don't want to have splinters hanging off the back because you have some that didn't cut quite right. And other parts of this package, open these up here. This here will be the back. I need to get that centered. In my work area, all the cut settings are the same for all of these pieces here. And then we have the sides. And I need to get this centered because I was doing this on another laser previously. We'll keep that centered. Again, everything is for a 20-watt laser. We're doing 600 millimeters per minute at 90% power. I do have a little note over here that the cut settings are for a 20-watt laser, so make sure you run a test on your material, and that will give you the settings you need to use for your laser, whether it be a 20-watt, 10-watt, 30-watt, 40-watt. And I am including in the package this laser power scale. I'll blow that up a little bit so you can see it. You can run that on your laser and you get the results, and you can pick out your best settings from it. So with that said, we're going to start with the front on the 49 hole rack. This set over here. So we'll head over to the laser and we'll get some things set up. I should also add here that we're using absolute coordinates and the project is centered. If you open it up and it is not in the center, you probably saw me do that, but what we want to do here is select everything, and it's grouped. And that's what this little cross is right here. You hit that, it puts the project in center. Okay, now that you see how those are laid out, this is a 16-inch square of that 1/8" plywood. As you can see, it has kind of a Baltic birch look, or a birch look on the front. And the other side has these neat little stripey things. And both of them look pretty neat. You can depend on which way you want to have it when you put it together, because you can flip it over. So we're going to get this set up here on the laser. For this project, I'm using the Algolaser Alpha because I already had it out here and was doing some engraving, so good thing to use. So here we are at the laser. It is very helpful if you have a honeycomb board and interlaced. Not absolutely necessary, but it'll make the project come out a whole lot nicer. And the face of this is symmetrically square with how the cutouts and notches are cut, so it doesn't matter which way you orient the grain, because you can turn it 90 degrees with no problem. And one thing you'll need to do is focus. So on the Algo, Algolaser Alpha here. We got this little lever we poke down. It's a little lever you pop, get that down there and where it belongs, touching the work. There's a little button on the side, you may not be able to see it. You push that and it retracts the focus. So now we are focused. So the next thing I need to do here, it's not absolutely necessary because my wood is bigger than the project is, but we're going to frame it anyway. That way we can make sure that we are on the project board. And if my framing is set to run a little bit slow, so that if I need to make any adjustments like I do with my honeycomb board here, I can do that. Okay, once we're satisfied that everything is where it belongs, just hit start here. And then we'll start doing its thing. It'll cut the outline first, and then it'll go back and cut all the little circles out. It could be done the other way and cut the circles first if I would have made that a separate layer, but because this is so large, I'm not worried about anything shifting. Now it's going through and we'll cut all the circles out, and again at 600 millimeters per minute, 90% power with this 20-watt laser. One pass may do it. However, if you get into some little weird spot in the plywood where it didn't, you're going to have one that didn't cut out all the way, and when you go to try to get it out, you're either going to have to mess around with an X-Acto knife on the back, or you're going to end up with some chipping. So just to be on the safe side, I'm running 2 passes here. You can run the test yourself on your material and make adjustments from there. Run time on the 20-watt version here is 25 minutes for the face, because there are so many cuts on it. And while it's cutting, you can be thinking about what you want to make out of all the little circles you're going to have. Don't throw them away. There's lots of things you could probably do with those. Maybe make some wooden nickels. So if you're new to using light burn and that type of thing, and you see that, hey, it missed 2 of them down here, don't worry about it. It'll come back and get them. Sometimes I wonder how it writes its G-code that it skips around the way it does, but it's not a big deal. It'll come back and get them. Don't panic. And there it is. So we'll just take this off the board. And that's what it should look like when you're done there, and you'll have a whole bunch of things. You could play Connect 7. I'll get them all cleaned up and we'll get the next piece set up. Okay, I have the back piece laid in here, and the back is basically the same as the front. It just doesn't have all the holes. It's just the outline. So we'll get this started and we'll get that one cut out. And run time on this one is just under 7 minutes. Okay, there's our back all cut out. As I said, the back is identical to the front, it just doesn't have the holes. Now I'll get my piece put in and the file loaded for the sides. And here we're starting to cut the sides, and the run time for this is 16 minutes and 25 seconds. Okay, here's all our sides. So, some assembly required. Okay, before we get into the assembly of this, you have to think of a couple things. Number one is, if you're going to finish it, that means putting a finish on it. If you're going to stain it before you glue it together, because stain does not penetrate glue. If you're going to paint it after you assemble it, because glue doesn't stick to paint. And we got a lot of options with glue and everything. I'm going to get some things cleared out here and we'll go through the assembly steps. Okay, you may want to sand this before you assemble it. Normally I pre-sand before I even cut, but I didn't do it this time, so I'll have to do it afterwards. Okay, with the sanding done, you're going to want to go over that with a tack cloth or something if you're staining, which is exactly what I'm going to be doing with this one. I'm going to stain this one, and then we'll have to let that stain dry, and then I'll show you about how we glue it together. Okay, what I'm using here is a Minwax penetrating stain. It's oil-based. I'm not a fan of water-based stains because they tend to raise the grain. On small projects like this, you can just use a blue shop towel. You don't need to get fancy with brushes and staining pads, etc. And if you've never used this before, you put on a nice heavy coat of it. Then you let that soak in for a while. And then you take another rag and you wipe it off. Now what I'm doing with the sides is I'm staining both sides of them, because you could look inside and see. Not absolutely necessary. Okay, once you have stain on everything and it's had some time to set there, just take another towel or two and just wipe off the excess. It didn't soak in. And I'll need to set all them out to dry before we glue it together. Don't try to glue your project together until after the stain is dried, and it's going to take several hours here because it's rather humid today. Okay, on the back I only stain one side. Same with the front, I only stain one side. That was the side that is facing out. Okay, just let those set out to dry. Don't buy cheap gloves. Okay, the stain has had several hours to dry, and these pieces are just sitting here. This is not assembled yet. So we have some assembly to do. So what are we going to assemble it with? Well, you have a lot of options here. You've got Titebond's Quick and Thick, which is a very thick, quick-setting glue, which I will be using when I put the top on. You have regular Titebond you can use. You'll have to do some clamping. There is CA glue you can use with Accelerator. The problem is, because there's such a large area in so many places, this would get kind of expensive, although it does work and it's instant results. Of course, and then there's also Gorilla Glue, but if there's two things you need to remember if you're going to use Gorilla Glue. Number one, get the clear. The regular Gorilla Glue will dry an amber color. Also, this expands, so you're liable to get a little bit of expansion out, what would normally be beyond what we would call glue squeeze out. What I like to use is hot glue to get everything put together and tacked together on the base and sides, and of course then the top I will glue on with the Titebond Quick and Thick. So I'll get this thing here warmed up. We'll get some assembly going here. As you look at your side pieces, you'll see they're not all made the same. This is a little bit like a jigsaw puzzle. So this corner would go together here like this. And that will then match up with the base. So you got to find the right places where things go. So you have the one here with the little bitty long legs. That would be going on this side here. And the other one with the long legs would be going on this side over here. Okay, with hot glue, after you apply the hot glue, it takes about 25-30 seconds for it to set. So I'll just put a little bead down here as I'm holding it. If the room temperature is very cool, this will obviously set up a lot faster. But once that is pretty much set up, you can work your way down the line a little bit at a time. You want to make sure you keep everything pushed together as you're doing this. And we'll just let that set up. We'll move on to the next part here, which is going to be deciding whether you're going to keep this as something to lay flat on the desk or if you're going to hang it on the wall. If you're going to hang it on the wall, we need to add a little support to it. Okay, if you're going to be hanging this up, you can pick any side. It's 14 inches square, so it doesn't matter which side is up. You'll want to have a brace up there to screw your hanger into, because just screwing a hanger into 1/8 inch plywood when you have all the weight of them little paint bottles, that's not going to cut it. You're going to have something inside to give it some good support. So I got a little piece of 3/4, just a scrap 3/4 inch pine. What I'm going to do is glue that back up in here, this direction. That way, whether you put a screw in from the back for a hanger or you put a hook down in from the top, you'll have something substantial to screw into. And I am just going to hot glue this in there. So as you put the screws in for whatever you are type of hanger you are using, that will be more than adequate to hold it. This is just to keep it in place until you get to that point. Yeah, I put a little bit of stain on that block because after I set my top on, you can see that white wood back there, so that's optional. So now it's time to fit the top. So as you put your top on, you want to make sure everything fits first, and I already did that. May have to do a little bit of springing around to get everything to drop into place. You would just work your way around. I'm not going to clamp it all the way down in there because I haven't put my glue in. Now, here you can't really use hot glue. So I'm going to use this little glue tray, a little silicone brush. You could also use a little paintbrush. If you got small fingers, you could use your finger. You use a popsicle stick. And I'm going to put some tight bond in there. These little silicone trays here, if the glue dries on them, or if you forget to put it away or you got too much left over or whatever, just leave it in there. After it dries, just bend the thing and it'll come right out. So now it's just a matter of going around all these little slots and putting a bit of glue. Don't overdo it or you'll end up with a bunch of squeeze out on the outside, and there'll still be some, and we'll wipe that off before it sets. You could also do it this method with the entire project if you have the patience. However, if you use this on the entire project, it will require some clamping by using some bungee cords or big rubber bands or some small glue clamps. Okay, once you have your glue applied all around, don't forget to take the glue tray out of the inside of the project. Yes, I've made that kind of mistake before. So then we'll get this set into place. We'll get the corner started. Okay, and once you have the front on, you'll see there'll be a little bit of glue squeeze out. You want to take a damp cloth and get that off of there before it sets. Okay, this is tight enough you don't really need to clamp it with anything. If you wanted to, you could put a weight on the top of it, and I may do that just because. Now all I got to do is let it set up. So there, I've got a couple sheets of wax paper on that, and then a piece of plywood, and then a big box full of wooden blocks. Now I'll let this sit overnight, and then tomorrow we'll finish it. Okay, so it's been more than just the next day. It's been several days since I put the finish on these, but we got so busy with a huge order, and I've still got a lot of stuff sitting here I need to assemble for orders we need to get out for some items. But we'll get back to these here. These have been coated with satin polyurethane, just a spray. And this one here again is set up to, of course the back isn't finished, but this one is the one with the 49 count that has the block in the top to put a hanger on the back, and I have not done that yet, but I will be getting to that. And this one here, I have put a couple, hopefully you can see those, They're little brass hangers, and I put them 2 inches in on each side, like so, so you can hang it on the wall, or you could set it on the desk. You could get little what they call cutting board feet, or I call them black rubber baby buggy bumpers, but they're little black bumpers. I use them on a lot of my laser bases. That way it's kind of a non-skid thing, and it makes it easier to pick up when you need to. Again, this one here holds 24, and this one here holds 49. How you want to finish them is up to you. If you have a lot of paints, you know, maybe you got a lot of indoor, you got a lot of outdoor, I'll show you the rack I have up in the loft. This is how I keep my craft paints. This little rack here, of course these are quite a bit bigger racks than what we just built. This is for all my outdoor paints, acrylics. And this rack over here has all my, what I would call indoor acrylics. These racks are a combination of laser cut and work on the table saw, etc. I think I did a video a while back on how to make one of these, and there are some files available for these shelves that are laser cut. They're made out of 1/4 inch plywood. There's no plans for this. You have to kind of do it on your own. I didn't make any plans when I made this. I just started making it, and it's the same for the smaller rack for the outdoor paints. But if you have a smaller quantity and you just dabble in a little bit, these racks that we just made here will work just fine. So there was my storage solution, and I believe I did a video on how I built at least one of those racks here a while back. Again, there's no plans for those. There's files for these. There'll be a link in the description on where you can download the Lightburn files to make these. There's no charge for that. So this is how they look if you were when you put paint in. It puts a little bit of an angle on it so that they tip back a little bit. They're not tipping forward to just fall out if this was hanging on the wall or standing up. As you can see, these are just standing here on the saw table. So it kind of gives you some ideas on how or why or what or etc. So if you got anything out of this, appreciate getting a thumbs up. Always helps the channel. Of course, there'll also be a link in the description on some of the materials I use and the laser I use, which was the Algolaser Alpha, and I'm sure they'd like to set you up with one. So I'm Roger in the shop. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. I got to get busy. I got a bunch of stuff to assemble here.